Never dig straight down. How many times have you heard that before? Hundreds of times, I would guess. It's probably Minecraft's most famous unwritten rule, and anyone that has been playing the game for a substantial amount of time should be familiar with it. Don't dig straight up or straight down. You may run into gravel or sand, or dig into lava. Pretty straightforward. While Minecraft doesn't actually have any in-game rules, it's things like these that are unwritten and acknowledged by the community as general guidelines on how to play Minecraft. Things like don't dig straight down or always carry a water bucket are all rules, but really only player provided, and the extent of Minecraft's so-called laws all follow suit, being credited to some player somewhere. Or do they? Surprisingly enough, whether you know it or not, Minecraft has some actual secret rules that govern the game's behavior from the shadows. Most players are unaware of these rules and just see it as how Minecraft is. However, there are tons of mysterious, unwritten laws in effect all over your Minecraft world, and you probably haven't even noticed their impact as something significant. Let's take a look at one of perhaps the most interesting rules in Minecraft, the ZX law. Let's start by loading in a world and witnessing this effect in action. Pause. There it is. You probably missed it or just assumed it was nothing out of the ordinary, but the ZX rule, or its second name, the Southeast rule, occurs all over, having many different impacts on many different aspects of Minecraft. First of all, when you spawn into a world, and you can try this out yourself, open the F3 menu and look at what direction you're facing. It's a small little quirk, but one of the more minor features of the ZX rule is that you will always spawn in a world facing south. Regardless of the seed or world type or terrain generation, you will always spawn in facing south. And this doesn't just apply only to players. If you try breeding mobs, spawning them in a dispenser, or just with a spawn egg, you will notice, if you watch carefully, the mob always appears to be initially facing south before snapping to a different direction. Frankly, there isn't much you can do with this information, apart from maybe set up a specific spawn item for players to see when they open a world, but I don't know, I'm sure you can think of something. But that is far from the only effect that ZX rule has, and its other impacts are much more noticeable. TNT cannons are somewhat of a relic of the past, not really having the same relevance and hype that they did a couple of years ago. Nevertheless, the thought of charging up a bunch of TNT before launching one tens or even hundreds of blocks away always gives me some sort of nostalgic excitement. And, as you can guess, TNT cannons are also heavily influenced by the ZX rule. Or are they? As the law dictates, cannon facing south or east on average fire further than those facing north or west. To test this out for myself, I built 4 TNT cannons, all identical, with the blue ones facing north and west, and the orange ones facing south and east. Before conducting the experiment, I also started with 2 TNT cannons, one facing north and one facing east, and I just marked the locations of the TNT with end portal frames. The cannon facing east consistently, almost every single time, fired further than the one facing north. But to test it again, I set up this contraption on a redstone clock and just let it fire for a while. For reference, each obsidian and crying obsidian square of 5 blocks is going to be known as 1 unit. It took around 10.5 minutes and fired 107 times. Rewatching the clip and taking notes, I discovered a couple of interesting things. Number 1, the cannon that on average fired the shortest distance was indeed the one facing north, but even more interesting was the one that fired the furthest was actually the one facing west. Even more interesting, however, there was barely a noticeable difference, and all the scores were incredibly close, with the standing as follows. East and south are barely separated. If you average southeast versus northwest, yes, you do find that southeast average is a slightly higher with 6.33 against northwest 6.30, but it's such a small difference, it can be written off as pretty much the same score, which contradicts the wiki's claim. This is kind of weird and mysterious, because when using the 2 separate cannons, it's so much more obvious that one on average just shoots so much further. But when used in this scenario, the effect is barely noticeable. Why is this? Well, frankly, I have no idea. Maybe it has something to do with them all being connected. I don't know. It's an unsolved mystery. But that barely wraps up the effects of the ZX law. Another minor effect of the ZX rule is its effect on trees. Tree growing is something you probably haven't thought of at all while playing Minecraft, but there is this really weird and interesting phenomenon that is associated with 2x2 trees. Trees like large spruce, dark oak, and large jungle can be blocked from growing in very, very strange ways. If you take a look at a dark oak tree, for example, and you place these 3 blocks next to it, the tree will still grow, obviously. However, if you place these 3 blocks next to it, its growth is halted. No matter how much bone meal you use, it won't grow. This holds true if I was only to keep even one of these blocks. And whether you guessed it or not, the difference is, of course, these blocks are on the south and east, and the ones that don't allow it to grow are on the north and west. This principle applies to nearly any block, occupying any space up to the final height of the tree on the direct north, west, or northwest diagonal block. This in turn leads to some very funny occurrences because there is no way in the world that this button should be limiting this tree's growth, because if we remove it, the tree will grow just fine and the button could still have been there. We can take this one step further with string, a seemingly invisible barrier that prevents tree growth, and even another step further with a moving piston set by commands, which literally makes it look like the tree saplings are bugged. Why this only applies to blocks on the northwest side, though, is unknown for the time being. The final and very significant impact of the ZX rule is its effect on rails. When you place some rails in a cross or T formation, then place a rail in the intersection, it will always curve east, south, or both south and east in the case of a cross. Conversely, when powered, it will turn north, west, or northwest. This is yet again a very strange occurrence, explained away by the ZX rule. You also may have noticed that whenever you break a rail with a minecart on it, no matter which way the minecart was originally facing, it will always face north to south, no exception, which maybe isn't part of the rule, but it's still weird. So, this is the southeast rule, and that leads us to consider, why does this happen in the first place? Why does the ZX rule even exist, and why can't it just depend on the way the player is facing? Why can't all TNT cannons be created equal, and why do trees grow in such strange ways? The answer is really an unsolved mystery, but I can give you a partial explanation. For some of these cases, there needs to be just a direction chosen. A rail does have to curve one way, whether that be south, north, east, or west is up to the game devs, and I guess they just decided on south and east. However, this doesn't explain the TNT cannons, or why trees only grow when restricted by southeast. It's cool to ponder, and I don't think really anyone has a decisive answer. Why? Well, that's a mystery. And for now, an unsolved mystery. Thank you for watching. So, you made it to the end. This video took hours to write, script, record, and edit, so I would really appreciate it if you could consider subscribing. It would really help with the channel a ton, and it means the world to me. Thank you ever so much for watching, and peace out. Have a good one.